You're welcome to the Policy Council. My name is Okwemi Agbaje. If you are asked which person or persons in Nigeria best illustrated the type of principles the Policy Council advocates, who would be your pick? Well, our pick is our guest this week. He's the Governor of Lagos State, His Excellency Mr. Babatunde Raji Fashola, and he's here with us for the next 2 editions. We'll be reviewing progress in Lagos, and we'll be talking around his legacy for the state. Enjoy the program. You're welcome back to the Policy Council. My guest today is His Excellency the Governor of Lagos State, Mr. Babatunde Raji Fashola. This is the second time on the program. Today we'll look at what has happened in between the last time he came and how he sees the administration shaping up. Your Excellency, you're welcome to the Policy Council once again.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay. Now, Your Excellency, let me start with one area which I'm sure many Lagosians would want me to start with: security. One of the positive things we highlighted in our last discussion was the relative security in Lagos, the fact that the Lagos State Security Trust Fund, which was your initiative along with some eminent Lagosians, had been an innovative, successful practice in terms of impacting security. But most Lagosians will say that there's been some erosion somewhat. We have kidnapping, we have maybe higher incidence of armed robbery. What do you think accounts for this?
Well, I think that my last visit was sometime around the first quarter or early second quarter of 2012, and that's about a year and a few months back. I don't think that from the numbers that we see, I hold the security meetings every month, and even the numbers that we looked at in the first quarter of this year as against the last quarter of last year showed that the number of reported cases of crime is reducing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's it. But what we see is that in spite of that reduction, I also do studies, get a feel of what we see is also people are amazingly more fearful. So there is fear out there, and we see that in terms of armed robbery, for example, we have, in places where we couldn't prevent it, we have apprehended the perpetrators.
And I agree with that. Actually, every major incident,
we've apprehended the perpetrators, and it seems that the game has changed. So we are changing too. So instead of probably stealing money, stealing a phone, or stealing a car, they're actually stealing the owner. and that's kidnapping.
That's what accounts for the fear.
That's what's accounting for the fear. And for me, I've told people, fear is healthy, but we shouldn't live in fear. We should adapt without changing our lifestyles. We should be much more security conscious. We must be much more interested in our own safety than government could ever be. The reason I say that is that I like to protect every citizen. I want to do what I can to keep citizens alive, to keep them safe. That's my most important job. But I can't be in every home. So because Lagos is safer, for example, doesn't mean that you shouldn't lock your door at night. It doesn't mean, for example, that you should go jogging alone at night. If you can get company, you are safer. It doesn't mean that you should be carefree about your own personal safety. You must take responsibility for ensuring that you do all that is sensible and reasonable to protect yourselves and your family. You must not expose yourself to certain conduct that makes you vulnerable to crime. The way you dress, what you wear, how you move money, where you talk about money, and so on and so forth. And no government could legislate that. There must be a personal self-interest to want to stay safe and that's what makes our job easy.
Okay. Let me ask about the Lagos State Security Trust Fund. Is it, in your view, is that model still working? Are you still encouraged? Yesterday or just a few days ago, you were receiving some donations from a company, a certain company.
Yeah, I think it was Nigerian Breweries.
Okay. Is it something that you're still encouraged about, that model?
I think the first thing to understand about the model is what it meant or sought to achieve. First, it sought to resource our policemen with tools and equipment which they didn't have. In many respects, it has succeeded in that. Secondly, it sought to also involve citizens in policing, which again it has achieved. Regrettably, over the last two annual AGMs where we present the accounts of how we manage and what we gain, I remarked then that we were experiencing a waning, a disinterest in the activities of the fund. We were seeing less commitment, and it was understandable at the time that because of the success that we had seen, people had assumed, but every successful thing needs to be improved upon. And as I said then, that I hope that we do not start from where we began, that it will be much more difficult to start from where we began than to continue from where we are. And so in that sense, there was some disinterest, if you like. We had begun to become complacent and comfortable, but every success, as I've always said, brings on new challenges. The criminals are there for an economic benefit, so every investment that we make that improves the capacity of the police means also that the criminals will inevitably change their thinking and their operations, which is what we are seeing. And as they say, if the hunter has learned to shoot without missing, the bird must learn to fly without perching, as it were. So it's a continuing challenge. And so seeing Nigerian Breweries join, for me, is a strong sign that we now have new participants. So it's not the same old people, and there's a positivity about that. 4 vehicles, as I said when I received the vehicles, means that we can put 32 more policemen out there on patrol. So, and the more of that we see, it's not so much the money, it's the interest that the gifts and the money signify to us. That there's another Operemi Agbaje who has joined us. So our army of security conscious people increases.
Let's talk about what you've said before on this program, I think, and I believe is the substantive solution to this issue of resourcing the police, organizing our security, and that's the issue of state police. In between when you came here last and today, that notion, which I thought was inevitable, that Nigeria was going to have to move towards state policing, has suffered reverses instead. We've had a debate in which I think the concept was shouted down, and now the House of Representatives, in fact, categorically rejected the concept of state policing in the constitutional amendment process they are facilitating. How did that rejection, how does it hit you? How does it strike you?
You know, I think there's some important things here to deal with. I find it difficult to reconcile the level of our national insecurity with the message that is coming out. So the question to ask is, who is giving this message? Is this those who can write to the IG and get police protection, or is it ordinary citizens who are defenseless, who are saying that they don't want state police? Because really, it seems to me that as long as we have this culture of an elite police, a policeman for my son, a policeman for your own wife, a policeman for you and me, and no policeman for our community, then we will have this loud ovation against state police. But, you know, experience and history has shown that it will not work. So, multi-level policing, whether you call it state police, whether you call it community police, is multi-level policing, where there is specialization, there is capacity to resource and fund what you have created, and ability to maintain and support. So, where we have less than 1 million police officers, that's the reality. Policing 160 million people, something is wrong. First, in terms of capacity, in terms of numbers. If the states can employ more, it will mean simply that by sheer numbers alone, we reduce the burden. Now, clearly, the federal government is unable to finance what it has, and people still say, in spite of the overwhelming evidence that we have, I have close to 30 APCs now, several hundred vehicles, buy uniforms, buy patrol vehicles, fuel them. The federal government contributes little, if anything, to that operational capacity, and we are still saying that we shouldn't get involved. No, so it doesn't accord with the realities. So reality. It's like saying, okay, I have pain, but don't bring the pain reliever. So let us leave all the other considerations. That's just a logical. Then, with regards to the inception report from the House of Representatives, I'm not quite sure that the House of Representatives is saying that. They are saying that that is what they are getting. Told them. And I think it's, to be fair to them, that's the report that they have brought. Whether that report represents what the people want, again, is quite another thing entirely. Because it's not just a police matter. It's also saying, according to that report, that the people of Nigeria want INEC to conduct local government elections in their states. So if the people of Nigeria are listening, as I said at a public event, that is this the result of the exams that you sat for? Yes. Because the examiner is saying this is what they are saying. If this is the result, then it is fine. Let us all keep quiet and watch INEC, that is struggling to conduct the elections ascribed to it, take on that for local governments as well. INEC has complained that it has logistical constraints. So where they will get the capacity and the men and the resources to deal with local government is another thing. But we'll wait. If that is what the people of Nigeria actually said, if not, they better go out there and go and complain that this result that they are getting is not the exam that they wrote.
Okay, let's take a short time out, Your Excellency, and we'll discuss some of the other issues that arose out of that constitutional amendment process. We'll be right back.
My name is Onyema Kinzago. I live in Lagos, where things are getting better every day. Our school has just been renovated and they give us free notebooks too. Going to school is easier and safer for students like me because I can cross the highway using the footbridge, and I use the BRT bus, which is fast, convenient and free for students like me. I enjoy looking at the beautiful streets on my way to school. And the many street signs tell me where exactly I am. When I get to Basic 12, the government will pay the fees for my GCE and NECO examinations. I am happy. My mom and dad say all these good things are happening because they pay their taxes. I hope to pay my taxes when I grow up and start working. Have you paid your tax?
Pay your tax. It's your civic responsibility. It's your duty. It's the law.
You're welcome back. It's still the Policy Council, and our guest is our favorite person on the Policy Council, His Excellency, the Governor of Lagos State.
Your Excellency. Know that.
Well, we know that. Let's talk in a little bit more depth about some of these issues that are those you say correctly, but are those from the House of Reps constitutional amendment process. It's not necessarily their view, they say, but it's what they heard from their constituents. And it concerns, around the local government system, there's a whole lot of issues that came out of that process. One you've mentioned, which is that INEC should conduct local government elections, with the implication that the state independent electoral commissions should be abolished. And that it wasn't even an implication, it was also another explicit decision. And then there was an explicit statement that the local governments will be the third tier of government, and they will get their allocations directly from the federal allocations. And there was a rejection of the notion that local governments should be, local government creation should be the affair of the state. So there was strong clarity emerging from that process that how we see local government is as an independent arm of government, independent of the states, and probably just another tier in the process. What's your view on all of those?
You know, I think that we are, before coming to the specifics, I think it is important to deal with the general.
Yes, sir.
We are experimenting with a lot of things. But I think that we are experimenting in very dangerous waters. Very dangerous waters. You see, in a multi-ethnic, multi-religious and multicultural community, the ability to manage diversity without limiting capacity and expression is so important. And that is why every multi-ethnic, multiracial, non-homogeneous society has chosen federalism as its way of governing itself, as its political arrangement. We cannot do otherwise, because that is the only way in which we can harness the energy that diversity brings without losing its individual essence and allowing cross-cutting fertilization competition to drive growth. So for me, our federal adventure is over 50 years now, and I think that that is a matter that must never come up to debate again. So it goes to question how the questions that were put to the citizens were framed. Were we subjecting our federation to question? I think those are things that we should have taken for granted, and therefore they should have been unquestionable. And therefore any detailed question that suggested in any way that there could be an option of doing it against a federal arrangement should not even have been entertained. But my word of advice and my word of caution is we must find our way back very quickly. I say that because we have operated a unitary government under the military, and we have operated a federation. And whether you like it or not, in the suboptimal way that our federal government has functioned so far, just close your eyes, think what would have happened if with the 26% that the states share and the 20% that the local governments share, they were not able to operate in the last 6 years. Think where Nigeria would have been. Just take out what we have done in Lagos. Take out what has happened in Delta. Take out what has happened in Rivers and Akwa Ibom and what is happening in Ogun or Osun Ekiti. Take it out of the equation and let's fold our hands. Which roads would we have been driving on? What would we be saying about this security? So that is the danger ahead for those who do not know. The pursuit of a unitary government will be calamitous and catastrophic for Nigeria. I'm an optimist by nature, but I think I must sound this one. Now, so going back to all those things, local governments must be matters that must be left for the states. Local governments, every state should decide how many it wants, to do what?
What structure?
What structure? So, for example, I am an apostle of autonomy for local governments, but I don't think the autonomy of local governments should be given by the Constitution. They should be given by the states
House of Assembly
that create them through their House of Assembly, and so on and so forth. You see, so the idea that a local government will be a third arm of government or a third tier of government really makes nonsense of the two-tier federative concept, as we have learned it in history, as it has evolved over the years. Oh, it may well be, it may very well be that our House of Representatives or our people are breaking new grounds in constitutional evolution. We will wait and see. Because, as I've always said, really nothing is sacrosanct about the constitutional theories and philosophies, because they were evolved by men, and therefore nothing made by man can endure for all times. But given what I know, constitutional evolution and return to unitarism are different signals entirely. They are different signals entirely. So when you look at all of what we are seeing, we begin to ask ourselves, are the people appreciative of the problem? Or is the House of Representatives, and I don't want to believe this, I still want to exonerate them, is the House of Representatives on its own agenda? Or has it become like the United States Congress, which is saying that if we not vote for gun checks, in spite of people dying, and 90% of the citizens say we want gun checks before people can buy automatic weapons, and the United States Congress saying no, we will listen to the National Rifle Association. But I want to hope
that there's no National Rifle Association.
That's exactly. You know, but the results don't match the realities. And who are we? If sovereignty belongs to the people, if that's what they want. I mean, we're seeing people saying they want more states, but we're seeing states that barely survive. So again,
but maybe there's a substantive need, because if the people indeed say they want more states, probably there's some dysfunction in terms of the attitude of the people. Well, that needs to be addressed fundamentally.
Well, with respect to the people, and I say this with the highest respect to them, the operations of government are not necessarily what burdens them. Is what they get as a result of the operations of those governments. And it may well be the case that in those areas they feel that if they had quote and unquote representation, their own governor, their own, and this is at the root of all of that ethnic diversities that I mentioned. So you see the contradiction in it, really. More states must centralize the power. So
it doesn't fit.
It doesn't fit. So it's probably that we are entrusting the people with the responsibility which they have given to us to determine what is best for them, given what we know. Because we turn the wheels, so we know where it should turn quicker and where it should turn slower. And what the people want really in all of this is to be safe, is to be prosperous, is to live their dreams. And they will clutch at anything that gives the semblance of their ability to get it. And some people have even arrogated development in their area to whether or not they have a commissioner or a minister. And I have sought in a small environment to make that belief unsubstantiable, and therefore to let people understand that whether or not you have a commissioner in my government, because if we put 57 commissioners, there will be no place for anybody to sit down after a while. So, but it does not necessarily translate to development, and the fact that you don't have doesn't necessarily mean that we will not serve you. Our objective is to develop the state in a wholesome way, having regard to the needs, to the resources that we have, to the plans that we articulate about where the lowest hanging fruits for success are, where the medium hanging fruits for success are, and where the long-term hanging fruits are.